Alright, hey everyone, this is David for Big Bits, and today is May 29th of 2020, and we are going to be going over some of the changes that were made in the Trade Alert Responder application over the last week since the 1.01 publish, and hopefully later today we'll have the 1.02 available. So first thing I want to do is just kind of show you all what's going on, what we're looking like now, and I would like to ask that if you have any questions, please go ahead and leave those in the chat. I'm going to try and keep up with that as best as possible. If you're watching this after the stream is over with, please leave a comment on the video and I can get back to you then, or you can just always contact me on Twitter or on Discord. Those are usually the best places to contact me directly. Now, I need to pull up on my other screen here some information regarding what we've actually done. I'm going to look at the commit history of the project and pull that up for you here. Okay, so I need to figure out, and I need to go back to, so everything from after the 22nd is good. So yep, there's our last release. We have added an about section to the application. Let me pull that up and show you. This is the about section on the application itself. You can see there's several tabs, and we'll go over this a little bit more in just a moment. A lot of the work went towards this particular section. Now, we added a logs page control, and that is for this particular one. It will display the current logging information for the application. So if there are new log messages added, it's going to add those here, and you'll be able to see all those log messages. And I believe in the past, in the previous release, we had the latest log message available down here. And this is kind of expanding on that to allow you to see all of the messages and not just the most recent one. Hey LMM, what's up? Alright, so beyond that, we also have a change in how the splash screen actually works. And what was happening with the splash screen, it just it was causing a lot of issues with threading. I would open up the browser control, and when the application would go to close, it would fail to close the browser because it was on a different thread. So it would open it up with the UI thread, but it would try to close it with a different thread. Or actually, I think it's the other way around. It was opening another thread initially, which initialized the control, but it tried to shut it down with the UI thread, but it couldn't do that because in order for it to have worked correctly, it had to have been on the same processing thread. So that's a little bit of technical stuff for you as to why I actually changed the splash screen method. I actually like the way it is now. It's actually easier. I'm surprised I didn't come across that code first. Now, let's see. I have kind of done some work on the plugins, and we had talked about this. I have added the name of it, and I've also added a section for those who create plugins to have their author name on here, and also an author URL. So if you click on this, it should open up, and it opened up my website, but of course it had a 503 because the hosting service isn't always the best. There we go. So got that going for it. There were also some other minor changes as to the interface, and I did a lot of work with testing plugins, and I'll show you some more about that in just a moment. Okay, so other than that, I changed the way some of this stuff works. You might be able to tell I changed some of the navigation, how the layout actually works here. I moved the shopping and the contribute buttons down here, and they no longer actually open up a new tab over here. What happens is if you click on the shopping, it'll actually take you to the website in your browser, whatever your default browser is. So it's doing this. I just clicked on it. So it's taking you there. Now I also have the Contribute tab set to always pull up the Info tab because it has the QR code and the address. And if you click on either of the QR code or the address, it'll take you to the Block Explorer so you can see what's going on with those addresses, if they've actually received anything. And there hasn't been any, mainly because they just haven't been available publicly very long. And hopefully we can get some people to either help as an author or as a contributor to the project, because the plugin system is coming along really well, and it's going to be able to work in the way that I anticipated. I talked a little bit last week about the plugins potentially not working, but I've done some testing with it and I think it can work, but there's a little bit more adjusting that we actually have to do to get this to actually work as a correct plugin system. But you can see we have added our info page. It has some information. Anything in this blue color is usually a link that you can click on, so that would open my website, and this would open up the project page on GitHub. And this is the location for all of the files for the application locally. So if you ever need to find any of your data files or your settings files and need to troubleshoot any of that manually, you can find that here. I believe also the log files are also stored here as well. We've already talked about the logs. I added just a simple disclaimer. This probably needs to be formatted a little bit better, and I might also have to add like a TOS or something like that, and some privacy statements as well. And of course this is a pre-release, so if you're using this, hopefully you understand the risk, and even though it's not trading for you, it can post for you if you use it in that manner. So just keep that in mind, and hopefully as things evolve we'll have more to work with. Let me see if there's anything else I actually need to cover that I'm missing before I show you the big thing. I think there was an issue with the commit and that it didn't want to build one of the pages, but the code's completely fine. Let me pull up our alert scanner section. And we've went over before how you can add a new plugin by selecting the plugin you want and then hitting the add button, and you can remove it by having it selected and hitting the remove button. But we didn't have it to where you could actually work with multiple plugins. Well, at least with multiple plugins that weren't already a part of the application itself. And this alert scan test plugin, this is actually one that I created as a test plugin to actually confirm that you can design your own plugins, copy the DLL, put it into the correct folder for the application, and load it in here. So this is not actually a part of the application. This is its own DLL, and you can see it's its own thing. It just happens to load the same information because that's just kind of how it is. That's how the settings are set up. I should probably change it so it's really more evident that it's not doing the same thing, but the only way it could have been added to this dropdown is if it was a plugin recognized by the system. This isn't hard coded in, so it's actually recognizing this, and I'll actually show you where we're getting that from. Give me just a moment. Okay, so this is the plugins folder. You can see my app data, plugins, alert scanners, and that is it here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to remove this. Let's cut this, and on my other screen I will paste it somewhere. Now let's leave that folder up, pull it over out of the way, close this. And yes, there is an issue. I have it set to throw an exception every time this happens, but it should kind of ignore it when it's actually running. That's mostly for debug purposes for me. Now let's go ahead and pull up the application again, and you should notice it does not have that plugin as an option. There you go. So it doesn't have the plugin. I confirmed that the folder is empty. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull it back in and show you that it's actually loading using the plugin itself. So there we go. I copied it back in. Let's close this, ignore that, start it back up, and it should load the plugin with the other one itself. Now, for those of you who've stuck around, the giveaway is still going on for May. It's only got a couple days left. I'm going to be changing the question again after this particular live stream. So hopefully you will have gained something from watching this live stream that will help you on the question that is in the giveaway. I do like to change those periodically to give those of you who actually watch a pretty good chance to win. Now, you can see it's loaded the other plugin here, and we can add that as we needed to. So that's actually pretty exciting, and I'm going to take a little bit closer look at some of the code here because really this is about it. Well, I did actually want to show you that the alert scan test plugin, it actually does create alerts. You don't, by the way it's designed, you don't have to actually be on the alert log like you do with the other one. When you hit scan with this one, it'll just automatically create an alert every 10 seconds. That way we can kind of test it out and make sure it actually sends the alerts back up to the application itself. So we should be seeing one now every 10 seconds or so. Yeah, so there's one. We should get another one here in another few seconds. Yep, so it happened at 31 seconds after, so we should have one at 41 seconds. That's 2 seconds from now. There you go. So you can tell that the plugin is actually working, and it is firing the event to show, well, for the application to show you that it received a new one, and now we just gotta get it working to where it will actually register that event to process to send out the information. But the good news is that it is actually working. It's actually creating alerts and sending those back up, and since that is possible, we can fix everything else involved with it so that it will actually send out the information that we want. And then once we get the alert action plugins added, you'll be able to do whatever you want. So I'm going to go ahead and close this, and we're going to take a little look at the code behind this to show you how this works and how I made the plugin. And we'll be doing this going forward. Well, I will do a video on this going forward as how to create your own plugin if you ever want to do this eventually. But what we have is I added a new project for a class library, and it is not loaded into the GitHub because I wanted to make sure that it is completely separate. And what I did was I created the plugin test, and I did have to run some references. Well, hold on. I forgot I can do it like this. So I did have to reference the core and the plugin from the project. So what's going to have to happen to create the plugin, as far as I understand, you're probably going to have to clone the project code and add in your own project for your own plugin, reference the correct things like I did, and create your class. So with this particular class, we extend upon the alert scan plugin itself. We return the information that we need, and as I said, the URL was set to tradingview.com. You can see that here. If I wanted to change that, I could do that by changing the URL value here that it returns. And there was an option for custom HTML. I think we mentioned that last week. There is also use the browser scanning. This will require that whatever code is in the browser is scanned to return the data. And that's just how it knows whether to use this scanning method or this scanning method. And since it's using the browser to scan, it has to accept the source data. This is the one that it's going to call because it's passing in the source information from that, and it also has to have the root element ID so that you can search for it like that, and that's part of the interface itself, so you can't really get around this. Yeah. And this is another thing that we had to kind of reference was the alert scan result. It's part of that core namespace where we have the alerts. This is just another small class, and we tell it that the source is valid. That essentially just means that yes, you can use this alert system. This is mainly designed for if you're scanning a website and it's missing the elements that you would expect. Here you would return false, but since we're not actually scanning it, we don't have to look for it. We're just going to tell it it's true. Then we have to return the ASR, the alert scan result. So the other part of the alert scan result is a list of alerts. So if we received more than one alert, we could send a whole list of alerts back. And we define our new alert here. We just give it a random ID and a note, and we have to set the time on alert. Now, this is important to know that the ID and the time on alert are required for it to be able to work. Otherwise, your alerts will not show up. And then on the test list, we add the new alert, and then for the scanning result for the alerts that were scanned, we send back that entire list. So what's happening is when it does scan, it's going to send back one new alert every time. And the reason it was sending back one every 10 seconds was because the delay between our scan was set to 10,000 milliseconds, which is 10 seconds. So hopefully this makes a lot more sense. And all we had to do once I added this project in was I ran a clean and then a build, and then I opened the bin location for this particular project, and the DLL that it generated, I was able to just copy that, move it into the plugin folder, and it worked perfectly. So it was actually really exciting to get that to actually work, and hopefully should enable a lot of stuff going forward. Just the fact that the plugin system works is a huge step forward for the application itself. I'm very excited about that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else about the project. There really wasn't a ton of stuff done this week, although it is coming along very nicely. I just want to pull the application back up again. I like seeing it. I love the splash screen because it's my intro to my videos. Once the form itself is loaded, it will in the splash screen and pop up to the scanning section itself. So I'm going to try to think out loud here of a few things that we can actually add. I need to change this to where it is also dark and it matches the theme. Same goes for the settings and also for the video section. Now, what I would also like to do beyond just kind of making these dark, and I kind of lost my train of thought here, but beyond making them dark, what else was I going to do? Oh yeah, it goes back to the settings. So what I would like to have eventually is that the Discord and Twitter are their own plugins, and it's going to be difficult because you have to save your settings. Like, you have to have your token ID for your Discord bot. You have to have, 4 or 5 different encrypted strings for your Twitter settings. So what's going to have to happen is I'm going to have to change the plugins to where they will return a user control in WinForms, which essentially, when we click this button, would open up the user control from the plugin, and then the plugin itself would be responsible for managing the settings for itself. So that's actually somewhat confusing, and for things like Discord, it would be nice if there was only one instance running at a time, but if you wanted multiple alert actions to happen at once, like if you wanted to do multiple discords, ideally the way it would work from this kind of modular design is you would just have two different Discord plugins for the actions, and once your alert gets hit and your settings for Discord for each of your loaded Discord plugins are set to fire, then you would do that. But I think what's actually going to happen is there's actually just going to be a list, and the settings would have to be changed to where they would accept a list of bot IDs and have to open up a new instance of Discord for each one. So in that case, it might not be the best idea to set it up to do that. Whereas other applications, it's really easy to do, like Twitter, because you have these API keys. You don't have to maintain a persistent connection with Twitter like you do with Discord. With Discord, you kind of have to remain connected in a way. That way it knows that the bot is online. And with Twitter, you don't really have to do that. You're just going to have to pass in your credentials and sign the request correctly, and it'll actually work. So there's a lot of things still to figure out, but I am 100% confident they will be figured out. And once we get the alert scan plugins working to where we can modularly create methods to scan for plugins, and we get like the notifications and like Discord and Twitter working with it, then at that point I would like to move forward towards doing the actual alert action plugins so that people can actually get started with that, and then we can start just developing plugins for your scanning methods and your actions, and it should, I believe the project at that point should take off pretty quickly as far as people actually being interested in it, because at that point in time we could potentially build automated trading with it using the alerts, accepting the alert coming in to the action. The action could process the alert to actually make an order on the exchange for you. So it's pretty interesting stuff to check out. Hopefully everything works as anticipated, but it's all coming along really nicely. And if you have any questions, please contact me directly. If you're interested in working on the project, you can always find it on GitHub. Let me pull that back up actually. Oh, cool, it didn't break that time. Wonderful. Where was the GitHub at? Here we go. So you can find the project under the BigBits.io organization. You can find some of the other ones, but if you click on Trade Alert Responder, you can find all of the code there. If you're interested in the release later, you can just go to the release section. There should be a new one. If you had the application installed before, it'll tell you there's an update available. And hopefully this time you won't have to uninstall and reinstall. Hopefully it'll just kind of update itself when you install the new version, as opposed to requiring the uninstall first, but we'll see. I think that's mostly me trying to figure out how to actually get it to work, and the version number because of that might not be 1.0.2, it might be like 1.0.5 as I play around with the releases to try and figure out how to actually get that to work correctly. So we'll be having that coming soon. All right. Oh, I did forget to mention, I did set up some of the code for doing the webhooks. So once we get around to that point, all we have to do is call our web request method, and it'll send the message out to the webhook. And since we'll be able to save a list of webhooks, or however the alert action is going to work, you can actually have it to where it'll do multiple webhooks at once, as opposed to other alert systems that would only send out a single webhook. This could actually act as a way to send out multiple. So if you wanted multiple bots to receive a webhook, then you could do that with this. So that is also very exciting. So I'm going to actually be done with that on the stream now and go ahead and take a little bit of a look at some charts here. There we go. So this is the hourly chart. Let me switch back to a 4-hour chart. And Bitcoin has been doing really well. What I'm looking at right now are these moving averages. It seems like it's doing like a fake out on this moving average crossover, and it continues to climb back up. It's going to be interesting to see if it tries to prevent this moving average crossover. It's probably going to have to continue going up a little bit. As you can see, it's the 200 moving average goes all the way back here, so it's continuing to replace lower prices with higher prices, so it's going to continue to go up. The 50 is going to have to really go up because it's currently replacing higher prices with lower prices. That means that it's going to be a little bit easier for it to go down as opposed to the 200 currently. So if Bitcoin dumps, it's going to be easy for the crossover to happen. Otherwise, it's going to have to pump pretty hard to actually come back up and prevent that. And that's kind of what I anticipated earlier in the week on the last live stream. I was looking at the chart, and what I was kind of expecting was that, let's look here at the daily, get rid of this stuff. Actually, I wanted to show the Bollinger Bands here. Hide the names of them. So the line that I drew on the daily is like awesome. Like very rarely do these lines that I draw line up so well, but this one has been really well. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that we were already coming down here. I figured the price would continue to go down, and usually it stays low for several candles and then it'll come back up. And my thinking was that we would have a strong finish to the month, and that's because there's some pretty important closes coming up to the end of the month here. And actually, let me change this because I don't want to see the SPX right now. Okay, so this is our daily chart, and you can see a lot better now. We never did come back down to the moving averages, and we never did hit the lower band. I was kind of hoping we would because I was honestly looking to buy some there personally. The price rebounded rather quickly, which is what I was hoping. And as for today, I'm hoping that this is a signal that it's going to try and turn the mid band into support again, and then bounce and continue up towards the end of the month, which is right here. Now, the end of the month is pretty important because, well, let's first go to the weekly and then I'll show you why the monthly is important. The weekly is looking really nice. You can see the 50-week moving average is kind of holding as support, and as I mentioned last week, the upper band and the lower band are both kind of lining up nicely to curve upward, so that if the price were to come up and hit the upper bands, it would be really easy for it to ride up in a fairly natural way, as opposed to if the bands were heading down sharply and it were to hit them. So that looks really well to me. Let me actually look at the other indicators for this one. Yeah, so it does still have momentum going up on all of the other indicators, which is really good. Although they are starting to get a little high, it's very possible that it continued to run. Now the monthly chart, which is the one I was telling you about that I was really interested in for this particular finish, let me remove that, is this. And you can see we had that very bearish monthly candle, but it had the huge wick, and then it had a golfing and monthly candle. And now what we really want to see, at least in my opinion, is that this candle at least close above this one. And in order to do that, we have to have the month close fairly solid. Let's see, where did this one open? 9,334. We're currently about $100 above that. So we need the prices to stay about where they are now, ideally, they would come up further. So the kind of target that I have was the 9,800 again. So let's go back to the monthly and see where that would put it. 9,800 would be up here. So it would also engulf above that one and just be very strong. And the other indicators, if it were to finish strong, would also look well. So the momentum would be turning on the stochastic. The smooth RSI would still be moving upward. It just turned on the previous month. And the stochastic RSI may find a bottom on this particular month if it holds strong. And you might also get a MACD crossover to the bullish side. So, hey, Gerald, what's up? Just kind of talking some TA right now. Looks like my stats on the YouTube Live are wrong. I haven't noticed you all coming by. The viewer count hasn't been correct. So if you got any questions, just let me know. I've already talked about the trade alert responders. But I'm just kind of going over some TA right now. A lot of the stuff I talked about last week. All right, let me switch back into the daily. Turn the Bollinger Bands back on and take a look at Ethereum. It's been doing really well. It is at the top of its Bollinger Bands on the daily. Momentum is up on everything. It's got a bullish MACD. It's on its upper bands. I mean, it just looks really bullish on the daily chart. Like, it could very easily ride the bands for a while. And this isn't usually the time that I would buy it, though, because the risk is higher for me right here than I would like. Let's take a look at this on the weekly. So this looks really good as well. It's hopefully finding support on the 50-week, or the 100-week, excuse me. It's also been holding above the mid band on the weekly and also reclaimed the 50-week moving average recently. So you could see it very likely heading up to the 200-week moving average, which is around 254, which strangely enough is some of the calls that I've seen some other people make recently for Ethereum is around 254, and with the momentum it has, I could very well see that actually happening. It's got a lot of room on the weekly chart to move up as well. Go ahead and take a look at the monthly. So we're starting to get some forecasting on here now. So the monthly looks all right. If it finishes strong, like we've talked about with Bitcoin, then the momentum on these will look like they're going up much better than it currently does. It kind of looks like it's trying to top on the momentum on these particular indicators, but I'm not necessarily buying that. And hello, Sadish. If you got any questions, just let me know, man. But I think there's definitely room, a lot of room on Ethereum here in the coming weeks. But as I mentioned, I don't like to buy unless the indicators are low. A lot of people wait for the momentum. If I were to have done that, I probably would have bought around here. So I usually like to just DCA when they're really, really low. Let's take a look at it versus Bitcoin, because since it's doing so well versus the USD, it should be hopefully bouncing versus Bitcoin as well. And I know recently here in the last week or so it's outpaced it. I know this is the monthly chart, so let's go down to the daily. So yeah, it did find kind of a bottom there for May, that is, back on the 15th, and it's been coming up ever since then. It's testing some pretty key moving averages. It's already rejected off of the 50, but it consolidated up near resistance and is testing both of them now. If it breaks out above that, it can continue to move up from there. So it's looking very well. Momentum, everything's really bullish looking for it versus Bitcoin as well. So if it comes back up above it, really no telling how high it could actually go. But if you kind of look at the trends, it could get stopped kind of short. So just be mindful of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this trend line later on, and if it breaks through that, then there's really no telling how high it can actually go. I mean, it could start moving back and reclaiming some of this stuff. And it just so happens I'm noticing that that red line kind of happens to line up with some of the former support here for where we're at right now. So that'll also be interesting to check out. All right, zoom back in. Did I take a look at this on the weekly yet? I don't think so. Okay. So yeah, very similar here on the weekly, although momentum could be changing here, and you could target like a moving average here on the weekly for the potential upside on it, which could also kind of coincide with the resistance from these former supports as well. All right, let's look at Litecoin. Wow, that's interesting. Looks like all three of the moving averages are right around here, which usually when that occurs, and you'll notice right here, I believe they were probably really close back here. If we had a chart with some more history, maybe you could see the 200 back here, but it looked like all three would have been around there. It went through there. If it comes back up, which it seems to be getting a little bit more momentum, it could potentially come back up and retest those really soon. And that's on the weekly. Let's take a look at the monthly. Okay, this one definitely doesn't have enough history, but the 50 is probably in through here somewhere. Momentum is kind of down on the monthly. So Litecoin definitely not looking as good as Ethereum was. Hey PJ, it's been a while since I've seen you. I'm actually working on a utility kind of like this right now. If you've seen the first part of the video, I'm developing some software called Trade Alert Responder. That's kind of the name I've got for it now, but essentially I am creating an application that will have the ability to have plugins, so where people can design their own alert monitor, so it can monitor whatever they code it to. And in this case, if you wanted to monitor a Telegram chat, it could potentially monitor a Telegram chat if it had access to like the API and stuff. And then using an alert action plugin that somebody would have to develop to trade, it could process your alert based on your settings for the action and potentially place a trade for you. So I'm actually kind of working on something like that, but as for something already, I'm not really sure about that. You might be able to find something that would send like a webhook out for you. There might be some Telegram monitoring bots that would do something like that, but I'm not too familiar with Telegram. I don't know. I had actually started working on a plugin for Telegram to actually send out the alerts, but I ran into some trouble with that, so I just kind of gave up on it for now. Focus on some of these other ones. Now the Litecoin Bitcoin ratio. Now this is interesting. So it looks like it is trying to find support on the monthly, and there really isn't a whole lot of indication on where it could be other than potentially back here around 3.2 thousand Satoshi, which in that case, as everything looks pretty bearish here on its Bitcoin chart, maybe it could visit those levels. And in that case, I would probably be looking to buy, because this is about where the indicators are when I would like to buy for myself. When I look at these longer term charts, if I see something that has hit zero on both stochastic and stochastic RSI and then hits zero again not long after that, it's usually, in my opinion, for me, a very good opportunity to DCA in at that point. And that's the monthly chart. So let's take a look at the weekly versus Bitcoin. So very well could see something similar to that here on the weekly chart. I'm not terribly convinced it's going to come back up to the 50 week. So you might get kind of a jump up and then it come back down like it looked like on the monthly chart. And then at that point, maybe that would be the bottom and it would be a good buy. As for the daily chart, it is also not very good. It's got some things going for it, but the best thing that it's got going for it is Bitcoin and Ethereum doing well right now, kind of pulling up the whole market. Yeah, I've looked at Alertatron some. I came across it when I did some research for what I'm doing, because I think somebody in one of the communities that I'm in on social media actually developed that one. I'm pulling it up now. Yeah, I've seen this one before. So the way that Alertatron works is well, at least from what I understand just by looking at it, is it receives the alert from the webhook. So what's going to make the trade alert responder different than something like Alertatron is that it's a client-based application, like some of the stuff I've done before. So you're not going to be looking for a webhook for it to receive. So you're going to have to scrape the data or receive it through an API, calling for the data periodically. You're not going to be waiting for someone to send it to you because you're a client application. But it also gives you a lot of flexibility, because the way I'm designing it is open source software will give somebody the ability to create their own method to search for alerts, and also their own method to actually send out trades or react to these alerts. And currently I have it just sending updates to like Discord or Twitter to let people know we've got an alert, but ideally in the future you could use the alert to actually create a plugin that will actually trade for you on platforms like that. Yeah. Yeah, as far as to send your Telegram alert to Alertatron, you will have to look for something that will send the webhook for you whenever something happens in Telegram. I'm just going to Google this real quick, see if I can find anything, because that's actually pretty interesting. So it looks like this would be possible. but I'm not sure if there's something out there that already does this. I think what you're looking for is a bot. I'm not sure if there's some place where you can find a Telegram bot, but from what I understand, I think your Telegram bot can do that if it's obviously programmed to. I don't know. Maybe that's one of those things that will get resolved. What I'm working on, or maybe there's something out there that I just can't find. But I didn't find anything immediately on Google, so you might want to try looking through like some directories for bots to see if you can find one that actually has the features you need. Let's see, what else do I want to look at? I want to look at basic attention token versus USD. Its daily chart is something else. Now, I posted the other day that it had a lot of potential, and it really did. The momentum was starting to break upward for it on the daily chart. I think it's somewhere around back here. The momentum was starting to break upward, and on the smaller time frames, it looked really well. It looked really good as well. I mean, it's just trading in such a tight channel. It's kind of wild to actually look at the chart to see how tight it's actually traded. There hasn't really been very many wild swings other than this particular period, and even then it quickly returned back into whatever channel it was in. But as long as it remains above the moving averages and the momentum is going up, it looks like the MACD is going to cross up. It still has the potential. It's just kind of frustrating, but I have a lot of confidence in basic attention token. As you can see, even if you bought now, the majority of price action is probably above it. But if you'd been DCAing at the low points, as I have, I'm fairly happy with where it's at right now, honestly. On the weekly chart, this is the part that kind of confuses me on a lot of these, is because on the weekly chart, they are going up so slowly, and it honestly looks a lot like the S&P chart, to where it's just kind of coming up slowly. Your momentum's barely going up, and that's a pretty low slope for momentum on stochastic, and even stochastic RSI. That's a pretty slow, a pretty small slope upward on your momentum, especially for the stochastic RSI. And then it looked like it was going to top when we had the red candle, but just like the S&P, its momentum shot up quickly. So it's something to watch. I'm not necessarily convinced it's actually going to break out, but who knows. This one's kind of confusing me lately. I'm not too confident on how I would trade this if I had to right now. And a lot of that has to do with, we're at resistance, but momentum's going up. But at the same time, you're pretty much right in the middle of the entire history of price action. So what are you really going to do here? It's not really a good place to get in my opinion, anywhere in either direction. Just a moment. All right, so that's the weekly. I want to take a look at the monthly. This one actually looks pretty good for what I look for. So we've been low, and as long as the month finishes strong, it's gonna look like momentum wants to continue up. And particularly the stochastic RSI, just looking at it, with another green month here at the end of it, it's going to most likely look like that on the next month. And that is either going to come straight back up with the momentum and price is going to continue to go up, or you're going to get something like that. And either way, it's going to be good eventually here. Let's see. It could go bad. I mean, it could range. I mean, that's all it would really do, honestly, until the end of the year. If it did that. And then it could go up. And you could actually see it back around $1 then. Who knows? And I posted somewhere the other day that based on the ratio for basic attention token versus Bitcoin, if Bitcoin were to reach 30,000, which is a pretty reasonable target if it were to break its all-time highs, basic attention token would reach anywhere from $1 to $3 if it were to return to its higher ratio values. And speaking of its ratio values, let's go ahead and take a look at that on the monthly chart. See, its ratio spiked all the way up there around, what is that, 9.2 thousand satoshis. I don't know if it'll ever get back up that high, but even if it comes back to some of these lower high levels, like 5.2 or 5.3 thousand satoshis, that's really good. If Bitcoin were to hit 30,000 or higher. So that's why I'm looking for potentially $1 to $3 in the next few years on basic attention token. All right, this is versus Bitcoin. So this is another reason why I'm really interested in it, is that it's one of the few alts that didn't really spike versus Bitcoin recently, but it's still kind of stayed in this tight lower range in its entire history versus Bitcoin. So when it does pop, hopefully it's going to be something like this, but you can also still probably expect something like that before it does. So I'm just going to keep that in mind. But I mean, it does look like an extended bottom, which is an accumulation phase. And I have been accumulating, so hopefully it works out for me. All right, let's look at the daily versus Bitcoin. This one's got a little bit more action. I don't know why I typed it in. I was already on there. So it's also fighting resistance, although the momentum is down now. So that's probably not good for it versus ratio. Now, if this does serve as an actual bottom, then maybe it only comes back to revisit these lows since then, and before it turns around and hopefully starts coming back up. But of course, that's yet to be seen. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I actually want to look at right now. Take a look at Ripple. I haven't looked at it in a long time. At least not that I can remember. All right, versus USD. Wow, it dropped all the way down to 10 cents. That probably would have been a buy, like most things at that time. But it is facing that cluster momentum. Yeah, this one's kind of sending mixed signals. I wouldn't touch it. Kind of like basic attention token right now. I wouldn't touch it. And I don't know why I'm doing that. I want to look at the weekly. This is similar, although it's got room to move to its moving averages as momentum picked back up there. Monthly chart. Let's see if I can find a better one. Poloniex, there you go. Monthly chart. I mean, it does look kind of like accumulation, but it's still kind of early on in it. if this one does break, I mean, it's gonna break. And you can see it going down quite a bit to 3 cents potentially. And in that case, I would probably buy Ripple for the first time ever because it's been low for a long time. If it does break up, they've got enough people on that bandwagon that the price is going to bounce at that level, I think. Let's take a look versus Bitcoin for that one. That is bad. Let me pull up Poloniex because it has more history. That chart just looks terrible. Okay, so this makes a little bit more sense. And that's just bad versus Bitcoin. You're going to hope to find a bottom down here, but you're in the range to where you're probably looking for your risk to reward here, and you're thinking it might be good, but I think it's going to flush and have a sharp bounce because it has been low for a long time. Okay, look at the weekly, see if that makes the picture any clearer. Same thing, although it's looking like it could potentially come back up for a little bit. Although I wouldn't rule out the possibility of it shooting back down either right after that. And the daily momentum is down. That looks pretty clear down other than the MACD. So long term, Ripple looks like it's potentially in a good spot to DCA. I've never bought it, so it's going to have to take it crashing one way or the other, getting that kind of flush of capitulation before I would consider buying it, because I'm not convinced that where it's at right now is going to hold. But I am convinced if there is a capitulation period that it is going to bounce, because there's too many people in it who are going to try and buy more to bail themselves out. I mean, could you imagine? Go back to it versus the US dollar here. Just could you imagine having bought this when it was super expensive? It got up to $3, didn't it? Yeah, it almost got up to $4. That is insane. Ripple was almost $4, and you know, it's having a hard time now staying above 15 cents, 10, 15 cents. That's brutal. I mean, you gotta hope for something like that again, but man, Ripple's market cap just exploded when that happened, and it was getting really high. It was ridiculous. There's just like no need for it to be that high at that time. Alright, so I think that's all I'm going to do for now. I've been on here for long enough. I've used up all of my available time. I didn't realize I'm probably a couple minutes over what I probably should have done, but later on here I'm going to be posting the updated question on the giveaway. So for anyone who's actually keeping up with that, you can check out that updated later. I'm also going to be publishing the new version of the Trade Alert Responder. And let's see, I will soon be making videos for that once we get enough progress on it. But hopefully you won't have to uninstall manually to install the new version. Hopefully it'll just update for you. But what is going to happen is I am going to post a link to the new release, and it'll also include that test plugin DLL if you want to try that, if you watched the video earlier. So follow on Twitter, or also join the Discord server, because I will be pinging everyone when that is available. But other than that, thank you everyone for sticking around for the stream, and for those of you who actually ask questions, I really appreciate that. If you all can leave a like on this stream, that would help a whole lot. Otherwise, if you haven't already, please subscribe, and have a great day, everyone.